Namaste and a warm welcome to the Ex-Christian Show, the insider view of Christianity from the outside. Persecution. That's the favorite word of Christendom. It has been Christianity's weapon, whether in the past or in the current times. The difference between then and now is that in the past, it played the oppressor, but propagated itself in history as the oppressed. And in the current times, it plays the victim and peddles fake narratives of being the oppressed. It even reports accidental deaths of Christians and stray incidents as Christian persecutions or persecutions on Christians. Interestingly, as technology advanced, the crying of foul only got more organized, meaning there are now organizations that are dedicated to playing the victim card. Their only job is to cry foul and appeal to any foreign government that is willing to hear their lies. The only motto of these organizations is to bring India into the top 10 countries that persecute their minorities. To that end, conversion groups of Indian origin based in the comforts of developed countries outside of India have representation in the governments of those countries. They lobby for declaring India as a threat to minorities, in this case, Christians. Now, case in point is an organization called Persecution Relief. A Hyderabad-based NGO called Legal Rights Protection Forum, LRPF in short, works for national security, and this is an advocacy group addressing various issues related to scheduled caste people in India. Now, this organization submits fact-based reports to the government of India on forced Christian conversions, and these conversions that target the people of scheduled castes. It also reports to the government of India the violations of FCRA Act by Indian NGOs and visa violations by foreign preachers in India. And the latest from LRPF is a detailed expose of the organization called Persecution Relief. Now I'm joined by Raka Sudhakar Rao. Sudhakar ji is a well-known name in the two Telugu states. He has been a journalist for 25 years and has worked in the Northeast region for 12 years among the tribals, and his work was basically to help preserve indigenous religion and culture. He calls himself a student of church growth strategy, church NGO politician relations, and he is best known for the brilliant content he puts out via his YouTube channel called Raka Lokam. Namaste, Sudhakar ji. Welcome to the
Namaste.
Ex-Christian Show.
Namaste. Namaste.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this talk, Sudhakar ji and I are going to discuss persecution. When I say persecution, it is the false narrative that Christianity has been peddling since its invention. And what is the truth? We're also going to discuss what must be the counter narrative, which is the true narrative. So Sudhakar ji, first things
Yeah.
first, what is the definition of persecution? I'll give you a few options. Is a random death by accident of a pastor or his family member persecution?
No.
Is stopping a church from being built in an unauthorized land persecution?
Definitely not.
Is preventing a proselytizer from entering a village persecution?
See, entering into a village is a matter of right for anyone, but then proselytizing to people or preaching gospel to people who are unwilling to listen is definitely a persecution of the victims, not of the missionaries. Missionaries do not have a right to knock my door, enter into my home, preach gospel despite my resistance or opposition or unwillingness. And this definitely is a persecution and an infringement of my fundamental right.
Correct. So not just preach the Bible, they preach the Bible while making pot shots at their practices. I mean, the Hindu practices.
That is unacceptable, and definitely it is despicable. It needs to be opposed because you have a right to preach your religion. Indian constitution guarantees the right to preach your religion, but not to deride other religions, not to insult other religions, not to demean the religious practices of other religion. I cannot say the baptism. I cannot question the process of baptism, or the way the Bible classes are held, and the way the hallelujahs and all those slogans are given. I have no right as a citizen of this country. I cannot oppose their religious practices, and in the similar manner they cannot also deride, demean, or insult my religious practices. I have a right as a Hindu to practice few, religious. I have my own rituals. I have my own set of customs. So that cannot be questioned. Unfortunately, most of those who come to preach and proselytize, instead of talking about their religion, they try to attack and question the basics of my religion. So I have a right to reply, and my right to reply cannot be seen as a persecution.
That's exactly what is happening, right? That's what
Yeah.
the West is trying to do in association with these organizations of Indian origin.
Yes. For example, the organization that you mentioned, the Persecution Relief, which is run by Shibu Thomas, a politician come, proselytizer working from, working in the central part of India, who has hobnobbed with all politicians. And then, I must place on record the contribution of Legal Rights Protection Forum. They have done wonderful work. They have exposed the persecution relief and the false narrative that they are trying to peddle. And at the same time, I must also place on record my appreciation of the activities of the organization that works as an apex body for collecting all the you know so-called atrocity literature from across the country, and tries to push it through to the U.S. State Department's religious freedom bodies, the FIOCONA, the Federation of Indians of North, Indian Christians from North, who are staying in North America. While the full name is quite a tongue twister, Rajiv Malhotra, in his iconic and path-breaking book, Breaking India, in page 235, he talks about Fiocona. Page 235, he talks about Fiocona and how it feeds false narrative, false information about atrocities, the supposed atrocities on the Christian missionaries and practitioners of the Christian religion, and ensures that they go into the annals of the U.S. Committee on Religious Freedom, and they are in turn used by the U.S. agencies to pin down Government of India on various issues, including religious freedom. So I think what Mr. Rajiv Malhotra has done years ago is now being picked up by the Legal Rights Protection Forum, and they're doing a one. They're the ones who have started this whole new discourse about what persecution is, and what should be deemed persecution and what should not be.
Absolutely. I mean, this is such an important dialogue, and I can't thank them enough for bringing this topic back into the the
Narrative.
circulation, into the narrative, into circulation, because since the early days of Christianity,
Yeah.
Christianity has been crying foul,
Yes.
while in reality it is Christianity that has been persecuting.
Yeah.
Sometimes people that refuse to embrace it, and sometimes Christian groups, Christian denominations that refused to accept the doctrines of a certain denomination.
Yes.
So there has been internal persecution, there has been persecution outside of their community, but whatever persecution it was, it has always been Christianity has always been the oppressor. Very, very rarely did Christianity suffer persecution. So it was always Christianity that gave persecution to the world in whatever way. And I'm really happy that after whistleblower Rajiv Malhotra ji has
Yeah.
talked about Fiacona, now LRPF is doing the same thing. It has picked up this topic and has brought it back into circulation. So this is a much needed discussion.
Yes. To add just one point, see the whole business of persecution. Persecution is a big business in Christianity. I would like to show some documents from the Christian literature. This is Tortured Christ,
For
published
Christ,
in all
yes.
Tortured for Christ in all languages. They talk about individual small incidents. They blow them up, and those are peddled across the country. But then there are doubts within the Western world about whether there were really persecution of the Christians. For example, I would like to quote this book by Candida Moss, who has written a book, The Myth of Persecution: How Early Christians Invented a Story of Martyrdom. This was written by Candida Moss, and it's a hot topic of discussion for the last 2 years in the Christian world itself, the Western world itself. She has questioned the whole idea of martyrdom for Christ and the idea of persecution for Christ. So there are questions over this whole narrative of persecution in the Western world itself. This is something that needs to be noted. The narrative of persecution that they're peddling across the country, across the world, and more so from countries which are resistant to Christian gospel, especially countries, democratic countries like India, which talk about syncretism, which talk about diversity, unity in diversity, which believe in diversity. These are easy praise for such narratives, and they're trying to pin down Hinduism in the name of persecution. Most of the stories of persecution that are peddled, as the examples that were given in the persecution relief's Fiocona webinar, all the incidents that they have given, at least eight of them, they were found to be false. An accident that happened somewhere is being peddled as a persecution of the Christians. An accidental death while repairing an electrical connection is also being peddled, and the newspaper reports of the same incidents say that they were accidents. The newspaper reports in reputed and prestigious papers like Times of India, Rajasthan Patrika, so on and so forth, they say that they were accidents. That is what the police say. But these very accidents are now being peddled in the Western world as persecution by Hindu right. That's a very convenient word that they have, Hindu right. Anyone can be a Hindu right. It can be BJP, it can be RSS, it can be an ordinary Hindu who resisted a proselytization of his family, or the trespassing by the missionaries into his asset. So even they are being now peddled. I would like to give you one example of this book called Srinivasudevaru, who is Lord Venkateshwara. This is a I hope you can see this book. This is written by C.H. Francis. Here in this book, he clearly demeans the Hindu gods and Hindu belief system. Lord Venkateshwara is adored by countless Hindus, and they pay their annual pilgrimages. They go there, they worship there, thousands of people, and the Tirupati temple is taking up whole lot of service activities. They feed over 55,000 people on every day. And this book, Srinivasudevaru, which is written in Telugu, published by brother R. Israel of Guntur. It was published in 1991. It says, I do not really want to read what he has written in Telugu, but I would only like to translate. He says that Lord Venkateshwara had an illicit relation with a woman called Bibi Nancharama, which is false. Even while having another wife, Bibi Nancharama is a devotee of the Lord. And he says that Lord Venkateshwara was murdered, and then he started moving in the area as a ghostly spirit, a demon, and then he was portrayed by the wily, selfish Brahmins as a god. He is questioning the very basic tenet of Hinduism. This is persecution. Actually, this is persecution, not what they're trying to peddle. The false narratives that they're trying to peddle are actually not persecutions. They need, actually, if something is to be called persecution, it has to be accompanied by an authorization from the police department or from the government of government records, which claim that this is a religion based crime. But no such thing is being done, and they're simply trying to peddle these as stray cases of accidents, as attacks on Christianity, which is not just wrong, it is despicable.
So, talking about Fear Corner webinar, so everything that has been presented as persecution of Christians, what do you think is their agenda? So, why are they trying to peddle these lies? What is it that I'm not talking about the past, why Christianity peddled those lies and created a myth of martyrdom?
Yes.
That is obviously to play the victim card and spread the so-called love of Jesus Christ, and to show that how people are willing to die for the so-called truth. So I'm not talking about the lie that they peddled in the past. Now, what are they trying to achieve by peddling these lies now?
The Christianity, the churchdom always believes that persecution is the easiest way for conversion. Their church growth strategists believe that wherever this narrative of persecution is peddled, wherever this is popularized, wherever this is used as a tool by the Western churchdom and the Western governments, uh, the conversions grow, conversions increase in those areas. So basically, persecution is a facade built to actually prevent the other versions from going current, and also by actually isolating these people, these minority groups which are resisting conversion, and then convert them. So this is part of a very big game. See, what is happening in the name of religious preaching is pure marketing. I would like to show you one, I would like to read out from our document, which is actually, see, I want to read it. This is a US document. The in the Obama government, during the Obama government, this is a document. I am reading it out from this book. The concept of religious freedom in US style seems to be the preservation of evangelical freedom to convert people from other countries to Christianity. The International Religious Freedom Reports published every year seldom report nothing else but the stories of so-called persecution as viewed from the Christian evangelicals' angle. The genesis of international religious freedom is narrated by Amy Sullivan, party faithful, and how and why Democrats are closing the God gap. This is a book written by her. She is a contributing editor to the Times Magazine, and she says international religious freedom was another area in which some evangelical leaders found Clinton's White House to be a sympathetic ally. Look at how the religious campaign and the concept of Western political dominance are converging. This is the most important thing. She says, after years of isolationism, evangelical churches had begun to recognize that the US government could play a role in preventing religious persecution overseas, an issue that directly affected the missionaries they supported. Republican politicians responded by writing legislations to create an office for the international religious freedom. This is from a book called Cross Purposes, published by India Policy Foundation. This is from page 79 to page 83. It has discussed the connections between the Western imperialism Christian proselytization, and the right groups that they create to actually peddle their narrative. So the persecution narrative has twofold objectives. One, to pin down the democratic countries like India, which are trying to assert themselves. The second is to quicken the pace of evangelization. So these are the twin objectives of using persecution as a weapon to, as a stick to beat the Hindu community. This is very important to understand.
So, since the loophole called the convergence of the state and church is already there in American politics or American
Yes.
religion, uh, our people, the
Yes.
proselytizers of Indian origin,
Yes.
settled in the comforts of those Western countries, are trying to take advantage of that loophole.
Exactly, exactly. They're trying to take advantage, and they're trying to. There's one interesting thing about this whole narrative of the report sent by these organizations. In fact, Persecution Relief is not the only organization. There are Open Doors, an NGO, which is working especially on the persecution related issues. We have Aid to Church in Need, ACN, which is also working among the persecuted. Persecution.org is a very popular website for the believers. Same way, we have Dova International Charities, which work especially exclusively among those who are in quotes, persecuted. We also have Statia.com, which comes up with a persecution index. They have their own way of measuring persecution. But what I found is the statistics that are being peddled by these organizations have a lot of loopholes. In fact, in the US, persecution church ministry is very popular. There are courses in universities like Oklahoma Wesleyan University in Oklahoma, which has a BA degree graduation program on persecuted church ministry. So this is a business in itself. That's the first point. And the more important thing is there are discrepancies. For instance, the Open Doors, which every year publishes a list of the 50 most dangerous countries for Christian missionaries. It lists North Korea, Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, Pakistan, Eritrea, Sudan, Yemen, Iran, India, and Syria as countries which persecute Christians. But their own statistics have a different story to tell. For example, the Open Doors 2019 index, the list of the 50 topmost oppressive countries against Christianity, it says there are 1,445 physical attacks, including deaths in India, whereas in Nigeria in 2019, the same report claims that there were 1,350 deaths. Strangely, despite having 1,350 deaths, Nigeria doesn't figure in the top 10. Look at the discrepancy. A country with supposedly 1,350 deaths is not part of the top 10, whereas a country where the total number of incidents, including deaths, is only 1,445, is in the list of the top 10. So there must be something fishy. There is something definitely fishy about the way the list is prepared, the way the countries are included. It depends on the agenda of the church and the agenda of the Western imperialists. Nigeria, with more deaths, doesn't find a place. India, with fewer deaths, finds a place in the top 10. And also, for example, the how many Christians have been killed for their faith. The number varies from one website to the other website. The persecuted, those who peddle the narrative of persecuted, one says 2,983 people have been killed and 9,488 churches have been attacked in India.
And this,
And the other,
yeah, yeah. So I'm really surprised that
yeah,
this truth or these numbers do not even stand in light of the church growth. There has been,
Yes.
by their own admission on the Fiacona webinar, they were saying that there has been a 600 to 800% growth
Yes.
in the last 1 decade.
That's very interesting because the Fiocona the first thing about this Fiocona webinar that was conducted on the persecution, it has been taken off from the internet. There are other webinars. They conduct monthly webinars, it appears. So other webinars, there are about 26 videos in the Fiocona YouTube channel. Some of them are clippings of the people questioning the Christians, and some supposed church burning where it doesn't clearly appear to be a church. The clip has been taken from quite a distance, so you cannot even make out whether it is a church or a stray fire mishap. And no FIRs, nothing to support their claim.
They have removed that
They
video.
have removed this. They have removed this. The other webinars are there. Other webinars, they were talking about the right of the preachers from foreign countries to who come here on tourist visas but want to preach. This is not allowed in India. Those on tourist visa cannot preach or proselytize
So
according to
this
Indian laws.
webinar is not there for public viewing right
Yes,
now.
it has
So
been
how do
put
we
the.
access?
Uh, it is not there on their website. It is not there on their YouTube channel. It has been uploaded by the Legal Rights Protection Forum.
Awesome. Okay.
Oh, the LRPF has actually uploaded that webinar. It is available for the public to see, but not as an upload by the Fiocona. That's very
Okay.
important. And the second most important thing is the claim that Christians are persecuted, and contradicting their own claim of persecution. They are talking about Christians being unofficially 8% in this country. Christians being between 6 to 8% is what their church, the Fiocona leaders claim. This is strange. At a on one hand, they're claiming that they're being persecuted. On the other hand, they're claiming that the church is showing a phenomenal growth. And at one point, I think his name is Christu Das or something like that. Some
Prabhudas.
Prabhudas. Thank you. Prabhudas actually says that 2 more%, if we grow by 2 more%, we can change this country. That's what he says. He claims that India can be changed, transformed. If you get 2 more% of this, if you add 2 more% to your numbers. So if the Christians become 10%, they can already, with this small numbers, he makes a very significant observation. With these small numbers, we are able to influence 5 states democratically. That's what he says. If we add 2 more%, we can influence the polity of this country. That's what he says. This is what he tries to peddle. So the numbers there for them is a means to actually change the polity, the way India thinks, not not for proselytizing or making believers or making faithfuls or saving the souls, but to change the the way
Policy.
India thinks and politics are played in India. This is very
To
significant.
impact the voting patterns.
Exactly, that's what Mr. Prabhudas says in this Fiocona webinar. So the the unintended consequence of this webinar was, instead of highlighting the persecution, they ended up exposing their designs on India, which I feel
Right.
is a definite must watch for every Indian who wants to fight for his own culture, his own country, and his own way of living. Indian way of
Probably
living.
that is the reason they pulled it out
Pull
from their
it out.
website. Yeah,
Exactly.
because they exposed themselves, and then they realized, when they started watching it, they realized what they have done.
They must have realized after LPRF made an issue of it. LPRF had gone to the
LRPF.
LRPF and the Legal Rights Protection Forum. They've approached the Home Ministry. They have lodged a series of complaints, and then they exposed the false narratives. They've given examples of the false narrative. And when this whole thing came up, the Madhya Pradesh government's child rights forum has issued notices to them, and the organizations that the so-called Shibu Thomas runs. Abundant Life is one NGO which works among the destitute children. So that organization was asked to explain its source of funds. Then FCRA related issues came up and discrepancies were noted. Shibu Thomas himself went on Facebook Live and he said that he may be soon arrested. So this shows that they're panicky, and to protect themselves and to safeguard themselves, they've pulled out this very webinar, which they were gloating over the successes. And this webinar is now off their YouTube channel. I would like to show you one example how Christianity in India has become just a marketing model. If you can see this, this is by India Every Home Crusade. India Every Home Crusade is an organization that works, it's in the St. Francis Street, Secunderabad. And this document is from 2001. These days they have gone online. It's very difficult to, get this written reports. This report is about Madakasira in Anantapuram Jilla, State Andhra Pradesh, Sector Madakasira, uh, Somandepalli Mandalam, and the name of the village is Roppal. He says the total number of households is 792. And here they say name of the village, Mandli, Anandapuram, and then how many tracts, large tracts distributed, how many small tracts distributed, how many houses contacted, how many people have shown interest in the gospel, and then how many souls were saved, and then here how many suvartas or good news tracts have been given, and at this here he writes a note as to how many people want to get converted, what kind of opposition they are facing, and which pastor has toured those areas. I have hundreds of such documents which
Wait
were
a minute,
sent to
wait a
the,
minute. So
yeah.
this was a sales report. I'm sorry, the proselytizing evangelical report that the local evangelist was sending it to whom?
India Every Home Crusade. This is the name of the organization. India
Okay,
Every
okay.
Home Crusade.
Every Home
And
Crusade. Okay, that's the
yeah,
mother organization,
that's the mother
and which has
organization and the
employed some multi-level marketers into
exactly.
these villages and districts and villages. And this
Yes.
marketer, this salesperson who calls himself the evangelist or the pastor, is writing down, filling up the sales sheet,
Yes. And every month
and
he
sending
sends
it forward to its organization.
India Every Home Crusade. What does this mean? They're not actually propagating religion. Religion does not go by numbers. Religion goes by beliefs, faiths, love for the traditions, sacrifice and submission to the God. These are the things that a religion
And
one
how long
expects from
back was
religion.
this?
This was 2001. Now they must have gone online, so we are unable to access these documents.
See, my
For
point
instance,
is, okay, I just want to stop there and say we are in 2020, but this was
yes,
almost 21, by the way.
yes,
And
yeah,
this was almost 20 years
19
ago,
years, 19 years ago,
19, 20 years ago. So,
20 years ago.
I mean, they were, look at their agenda, look at their structure, the structure to
Yeah,
the whole activity called sharing the love of Jesus.
yes, yeah,
So you don't go uh, with a structure when you're trying to share the love of
love,
some
yeah,
deity.
yeah. You
You
don't
only
make a
do
you,
you do only follow a structured pattern when you're trying to increase your profits, when you're trying to increase the numbers and build a brand and take the brand to the international level. So you follow a structure to achieve all these things, not to share the love of some deity who has supposedly created the entire world.
yeah, exactly. So this is nothing short of a marketing strategy. This is nothing but adding of numbers. They want numbers. It's not about whether the soul is really saved, whether he's understood the purport of the Bible, whether he has understood that Jesus was truly his God, and then or Jesus or whoever is his. Jesus is Son of God, of course, but then that's what they say. Yese Devudu. That's what they peddle here. So the whole point is, when you have such tabulated reports of how many tracts are given, how many people were approached, how many houses were contacted, how many people became favorable to Christianity, how many people wanted to study the Bible courses, and what kind of help do they need. And this man is asking for a bicycle, he's asking for more tracts, he's asking for his monthly remuneration. On the obverse side of these reports, they write their if you can see, I don't know whether you can see, on the obverse side these people write their requirements. He says, my health is not good, please send medicines for me, please send money for me, I need a bicycle to travel, I need a small house, and I need to pay the rent. So this is nothing short of a sales report pushed by a sales representative who is working on the field to his area manager.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
exactly. So
It's like so many fools have been cheated, so many more to go.
so many more to go. Their aim is to add up numbers, change demography, affect the democracy. Now, that's what is very important to understand. So this whole business of persecution is nothing but a facade to cover up their excesses, atrocities, one, and secondly, to prepare, to instill a fear complex and confuse those who are working to protect their own religion. They're afraid. Today I work here, and tomorrow there's a report coming from the US which blames the government of India, and government of India, its collectors, its whole administration is head over heels thinking of winning marks from the Americans. So they try to prevent those people who want to protect the indigenous religions. There are action against them. All these things are happening. I would like
I
to give you one more example of this. This is a book. This is written by Church Growth Association of India, India Missions Association. It is written by S. Vasantaraj Albert. This book is about Orissa church and people's groups. This book talks about every, you would be surprised. See, every taluk or the subdivision in Orissa, every district, it is mapped. The population is mapped. What are the major, communities? Who is resistant to Christianity? Who is amenable to Christianity? Vulnerable to Christianity? And they give the number of Christian population of different castes for every taluk of Odisha. If they
hmm,
have done it for Odisha, they must have done it for Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and every state in this country. So
correct.
someone who's preaching the word of God has to preach it to everyone. Why this systematic attempt to target communities? Why this systematic attempt to look at the numbers? Why this systematic attempt to, why this, devious attempt to reach out to vulnerable sections?
Very
This
valid
is
point. Very valid point.
that is a very important thing. Most people feel that Christianity is a religion. Unfortunately, it is not. It is an attempt to change the demography of this country across the world. In Northeast, I used to hear a slogan: create a minority, give it a nationality, make it militant, divide the country, rule the world. This is church strategy. They create small groups, cut them off from the mainstream, give it a nationality. They call your Nagas, you are separate from rest of the country, your Mijo, your Kasi, your Garo, your so on, so forth. And then make it militant. They arm them. In Nagaland, there is an extremist group which says that they are working for Nagaland for Christ. Their slogan is Nagaland for Christ, National Socialist Council of Nagaland. So make it militant, divide the country, rule the world. The objective is very clear.
Do they propagate this openly?
Of course, Nagaland for Christ is an open slogan.
Okay.
It's a very
So there's
open
this
slogan.
5-step strategy.
This 5-step strategy is, of course, they never mention this, but there are people who privately, in private conversations, they say this. So that's it's officially you may not be able to get this document, but in private conversations they do admit that their idea is to have a world under one rule. They may
The
call it
Christian
Jesus
rule.
rule or the Christian rule, whatever. But then this is the idea. This is the 5-step process.
Very interesting. Very, very dangerous.